Well, welcome everyone. Just a brief disclaimer before we begin. I'd like to first remind everyone that this call may contain forward-looking statements, including but not limited to the company's expectations or predictions of financial and business performance, which are based on numerous assumptions about sales, margins, competitive factors, industry performance, and other factors which cannot be predicted. Forward-looking statements are inherently subject to risks, uncertainties, and assumptions, and they are not guarantees of performance. I encourage you to read the disclaimer slide in the investor presentation for a discussion of the risks that may affect our business or may cause our assumptions to prove incorrect. The company is under no obligation and expressly disclaims any obligation to update, alter, or otherwise revise any forward-looking statements, whether as a result of new information, future events, or otherwise, except as required by law. Okay, great. So welcome again to Fusion Fuel Green PLC's second quarter 2021 update. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Benjamin Schwartz, and I'm Head of Investor Relations at Fusion Fuel. So just a quick rundown of the plan for the next hour. I will hand it off to the team for discussion of financial results and operational highlights for the quarter. Then we will open up the floor for a moderated Q&A session with the management team and Fusion Fuel's chairman. Quick reminder to please submit your questions in the Q&A box, or alternatively, you can submit them via email to ir@fusion-fuel.eu. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Fusion Fuel's CFO, Federico Figueira de Chavez, to kick off our discussion of the second quarter.
Great. Thank you very much, Ben. Not sure if the slides are up. There we go. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're looking forward to share with you the latest and greatest over here at Fusion Fuel. Before we get into the details of our business, I'll briefly recap what we're all about for any newcomers and provide some color also on recent market developments. So just to remind everyone, we're a company dedicated to the creation of green hydrogen production solutions. Our flagship HEVO solar solution combines a concentrated photovoltaic solar panel with a proprietary miniaturized PEM-based electrolyzer, which creates a fully integrated, off-grid, modular and scalable green hydrogen generator that is highly cost efficient. I think I hit all the buzzwords there, but they will be in those little circles there on the slides. So key to remember: integrated unit, miniaturized electrolyzer, and off-grid. I mean, this is critical to our competitive advantage. To speak a little bit about what's been happening in the market that's impacting the hydrogen market overall for both grey, brown, and green hydrogen. The cost of grey hydrogen is largely driven by the cost of natural gas. As you can see on the chart on the left-hand side, natural gas over the last 18 months or so has had a significant increase, within the last 12 months alone, a 770 increase in the cost of natural gas here in Europe. That is there's a direct relation between the cost of natural gas and the cost of grey hydrogen, meaning that the cost gap between grey and green has, at least temporarily, shrunk. But we believe that in the coming years, this gap will continue to shrink, especially given the carbon emission charges that are expected to not only continue in Europe, but also increase in that value. So green hydrogen has probably never been as well positioned in the competitive landscape as it is today. On the right-hand side, you see the electricity costs in the Iberian market. So in Portugal and Spain, in the last 12 months, electricity prices have increased roughly 350%. This is and you can see the volatility of that movement there on the chart. Now, this can be a significant issue for centralized electrolyzers that are on grid. Not only to deal with the volatility in the cost of their green hydrogen, but also in the increase of cost of green hydrogen that this represents. So this showcases the advantages of having green hydrogen production solutions that are either off-grid with a dedicated power generation source, or fully integrated like our own HEVO solar solution. So we right now we seem to be in quite a sweet spot in the market, with both grey becoming more expensive and off-grid having a significant competitive advantage. Now to do a little recap of the second quarter highlights. I will just touch upon the ones that we don't mention in the slides later, and the only reason for those is that we've actually already mentioned them in the first quarter slides as part of subsequent events. We did announce a partnership or an agreement with Elecnor to develop green hydrogen projects in Spain. We also announced a partnership with CCC to develop green hydrogen projects in the Middle East, specifically looking at doing demonstrator plants in 3 of the Middle Eastern markets. And we also announced agreement with Ample to install a demonstrator plant in Australia at their Lytton refinery. We'll provide more details on the other points during this presentation. And if anyone's curious to learn more about the 3 I just mentioned, as I mentioned, they are all in our first quarter results presentation that's on our website. On the financials, we have modest revenues and cost of sales in the second quarter related to the provision of custom-made parts and components to our production partner. This is the same as the first quarter. You see that the numbers between revenues and cost of sales match exactly. This is just for us the strategic provisioning of custom-made parts to our production partner. So this relationship will continue throughout 2021. In the total operating expenses, we've split these into cash and non-cash expenses for transparency and to better monitor the actual activities of the business. The shared-based expenses are related to last year's transaction. These charges relate to potential share and warrant obligations from the merger agreement. These are non-cash expenses and they will continue into June of 2022. The operating cash-based expenses are driven by payroll, both internal and external staff, and then followed by insurance, office and land leases, and legal costs. We have had also some FX charges in there as well. Another non-cash impact, which is the last line just below pre-tax income, is the value of our warrants, which we need to revalue each quarter, and we need to recognize the difference in the P&L. In Q1, we had a substantial positive impact from those, just on an accounting basis. In Q2, we had a modest negative impact, again on an accounting basis. What you'll see on the last line is a substantial change to our cash balance. It's reduced by around 11.5 million. This is largely driven by 2 main factors. One is the purchase of the Benavente facility, our future production facility, for around 5 million euros. We will look to, in the midterm, secure a lending facility against that, so we hope to recover some of that liquidity drain that happened there. But we believe we made a very, not only strategic purchase, but even a very good purchase in terms of the asset value there. Around 4 million of that cash also went to the purchase of components and raw materials to be used in our production process. These are large purchase orders, especially given the longer lead times we've been seeing in the market. We made sure to put some very large orders through to try and secure as much of the supply chain as we can. Just on our shares and warrants outstanding, there's been no change from the first quarter. We've had no warrant conversion in the second quarter. So just provide that for your transparency. So before we take you through our business update, we'd like to share some photos of the activities that have been happening in the recent months, namely the development of our Evora plant, the launch of our Morocco project, and our new factory. So we see here the Evora development and construction of this project is Portugal's first solar to hydrogen project. During As we were rolling out, we also had a visit from Portugal's Minister of the Environment and Energy Transition and the Secretary of State for Energy. This is a strategically important project here in Portugal. We also then had the announcement of our Hivo ammonia Morocco project with His Excellency, the Minister of Energy, Mines and the Environment. This is the largest green hydrogen and green ammonia project announced to date in Morocco. And lastly, we have the Benavente facility as it was bought, which was needing extensive renovation, which has since kicked off with reparations, full change of the entire flooring, and so on. So a very large space, in which the flooring is now complete, and we can soon start the installation of our clean room. So, as we have always done, we start with a slide that we showed in January of the 3 key milestones we set for ourselves in 2021. So apologies if this is repetition for everyone, but for good or bad, we will keep presenting our progress against these 3 milestones throughout this year. So these, just to recap, this is the go live of our Évora plant. This is to prove the industrial scale effectiveness of our technology and to establish a track record for technology bankability. The second was the signing of strategic MOUs and the signing of confirmed, be it hydrogen purchase agreements or technology purchase orders, so that we would have those confirmed revenues and orders coming through in the coming years. And the last is the production, the creation of our own production facility, which is obviously the Benavente facility, and the target we had to have the first units come online at year end. So we'll go through each of those during this presentation. So start with Évora. Évora is our utility scale demonstrator. It's strategically important for us to show interested parties to come and validate our technology. For phase 1, all the solar trackers are installed, the water and hydrogen management systems are in place, the fuel cell from Ballard has been delivered. We can already produce green hydrogen for testing purposes. We have had issues with the delivery of membranes, which means that we are still rolling out Hivos to the systems as the membranes arrive. We intend to ask for commissioning of the plant at some point next month. For phase 2, civil construction is well underway. Structures are to be erected this and next month, and Hivos to be rolled out as soon as the membrane deliveries allow. For Évora, this is probably something that a lot of you were waiting for, and we're also very happy to be sharing this news. We asked an independent lab to come to Évora and validate the performance of our solar to green hydrogen production. In Évora, our R&D team actually installed the next generation of Hivos. So if you can see me, as a reminder, many of you have seen this, what I have in my hand is actually the original sort of Hivo solution. We haven't shared this before, but the new, latest and greatest Hivo is a little less photogenic, sort of the uglier cousin of the previous one, but it's substantially more powerful. So this is actually the Hivo that has gone into be installed in Évora. So we are thrilled to announce and to communicate that the independent lab has confirmed the generation of the new, let's say, uglier Hivo is about has a 10% increase in performance from the previous version, and it's also a 10% increase in performance from what we had assumed in our 2021 plan. So we're thrilled with all the work that the R&D team has been able to do on that and delivered with that increased performance. So with now an update on our production facility. As I mentioned before, we have purchased the Benavente production facility with a size to grow up to an output of around 500 megawatts of electrolyzer capacity in 2025. As you saw in the photos, renovation well underway. Next steps is for the clean room to be installed so that then the first production lines can also begin installation. As we had feared, but we hadn't had confirmation, recently the providers of some of the equipment of the robotized lines have informed us of delays of delivery, which means we have to push the go live of the facility to sometime in the third quarter of next year. So this is one of the disappointment developments, but let's say with the constraints that we're seeing globally, with all sorts of semiconductor and other components, not a particular surprise. In the meantime, we'll continue to use the outsourced production facility that we have today. We've also experienced a number of disruptions to our own supply chain, ranging from higher raw material costs, limited volumes of delivery, and at times also quality issues. So we've had even components which have a sort of 30% error rate, which we have to send back. Due to both the modification to the latest TiVo and the significant short-term supplier constraints, we need to revise down our 2021 production guidance to between 150 to 200 solar units this year, down from 600. These will be HEVO solars with the new HEVO technology, but still a lower production target than previously announced. We're working with our suppliers to unlock the constraints that we've seen this year for 2022. However, due to the delay of the Benavente factory being up and running, we also have to revise our 2022 production targets down to 2,000 to 2,500 units, down from about 4,700. This is the total production of our production partner facility, as well as the partial year production at Benavente. There will be no change to 2023 and subsequent years, given that Benavente will by then be fully up and running. This has minimal impact on our announced business plan targets in terms of net income, even for 2022. What we will see in 2022 is also benefits of some grants that we will mention in a few minutes, and financial aid for the Benavente development. As a reminder, the Benavente facility, we can apply for financial aid for a substantial amount of those costs, where we could get up to 25% of financial aid on that development costs. Now, for business development, I will pass you to João.
Okay, let me thank you for attending our quarterly results presentation. The past months were especially active in the pursuit of our strategic plan to develop the green hydrogen projects, which define as priority the negotiation of MOUs and HPAs with some of the world's leading companies involved in oil and gas and ammonia business. As mentioned before, our initial strategy was to develop green hydrogen projects and solidify our presence in Southern Europe, mainly Portugal, Spain, and Greece, and in the north of Africa, more precisely in Morocco. But increased interest from several other countries in the world led us to anticipate our international growth and start developing business in different geographies. Our HEVO technology has a tremendous advantage when compared to other electrolyzers, since we produce green hydrogen directly from the conversion of solar radiation, allowing from one side to reach the highest efficiency and lowest levelized cost, but also allowing to develop projects in locations completely off-grid. Additionally, our technology is most suitable for the world regions with higher levels of direct solar irradiation, which are the regions where have been announced the biggest green hydrogen projects today, such as Australia and USA, where we already incorporated Fusion Fuel Australia and Fusion Fuel USA, and also MENA region, India and Chile, where we are negotiating the first demonstration projects. Now we begin the presentation of our business activity, starting in Southern Europe by Portugal. We are moving forward with our initial short-term demonstration plants in the south of the country, which altogether represent the installation of around 300 EVOs, or meaning 7.5 megawatts. We are also developing 5 green hydrogen projects in the Sines area, which altogether represent installation of around 25,000 EVO solars and 600 megawatts. The green hydrogen produced will be mostly injected in the natural gas pipelines to mix with natural gas, will be used to produce green ammonia to be used as a hydrogen carrier to be exported to the north of Europe, to be stored in bottles to supply industry, and also to supply hydrogen refueling stations and the development in Portugal. For the development of this Sines project, we are securing around 800 hectares of land, and we are starting the permitting process for the first projects that will be installed in 2022 and 2023. The projects were submitted to European funding programs available for decarbonizations, which I will explain in more detail in the next slides. In Spain, the strategy is the same as the one we defined for Portugal. We are developing demonstration plants, which altogether represent installation of 325 EVO solars, which is the same as saying around 8.2 megawatts equivalent. We established a partnership cooperation for the installation of several hydrogen refueling stations. We expect to announce the first project soon. We are also under negotiation with some of the most important oil and gas companies to develop green hydrogen project, which represents the supply and installation of around 30,000 EVO solars, which means around 750 megawatts in the next 5 years. For that purpose, we are also negotiating and securing land of more than 1,500 hectares to install the projects. We expect to announce the first EPC contract and HPA very soon. Again, the projects will be submitted to European funding programs available for decarbonization. In Greece, negotiations are undergoing with an oil and gas company to develop green hydrogen project. We expect to announce the installation of the first demonstration plant very soon. In Morocco, we've been especially active. We are developing an amazing project to produce 31,000 tons of green hydrogen, which will be used in the production of 180,000 tons of green ammonia under a partnership with two important global companies. I will explain the project in more detail in the next slides. Then we have Australia, which is a priority market for fusion fuel due to the favorable conditions in terms of solar radiation that allow reaching the lowest levelized cost of hydrogen in the world today. We recently incorporated Fusion Fuel as Australia, and we are under negotiations for the development of a first demonstration project with Ampol. In the USA, as it is a very promising market for the green hydrogen, for the development of green hydrogen projects, last quarter we incorporated Fusion Fuel USA, and we already submitted an expression of interest to the Department of Energy for the development of a project in California, taking advantage of the high levels of solar radiation in the central California that will allow us to obtain a very low levelized cost of hydrogen for the supply of hydrogen refueling stations for fuel cell electrical vehicles. Additionally, we are developing business in other markets, such as MENA region countries, where we mentioned we have developed a cooperation with CCC, a global EPC contractor, to develop green hydrogen projects in the region. We are in the negotiation to install green hydrogen projects in several countries, such as the United Arab Emirates, Oman, Qatar, and most recently in Egypt. In India, we developed a cooperation with BGR Energy. It's a global EPC contractor from India to develop green hydrogen in the country. Negotiations are undergoing to install a green hydrogen demonstration plant in the Gujarat state. In South America, we are under early negotiations with a strong developer to install a green hydrogen project in Atacama. Now, more detailed information. In Portugal, we submitted 3 green hydrogen projects to PORTUGAL, which is Portugal's operational program for funding sustainable and efficient use of resources. The first project is being developed by Fusion Fuel. It is called EVO Sul and consists of installation of 178 EVO solars to produce 480 tons of green hydrogen per year to be mixed and injected in natural gas and to produce green ammonia. The project has a global investment of around 8 million euros and very recently received the approval from PORTUGAL for a grant of 4.3 million. To get that grant approval, we had to demonstrate that the land to install the project and off-taker of the green hydrogen were already secured. In the second and third projects, we will act only as technology supplier. The second project is being developed by PRIO Energy, a Portuguese company that distributes and commercializes liquid fuels. It consists on the installation, on the supply and full installation of 62 EVOs with a rough estimation value of 2.4 million. The third project is more or less the same, but it will be developed by Chem Energy. Again, it will be 62 EVO solars, and it is more or less the same investment as PRIO Energy. Additionally, our EVO project, which consists of installation of 25,000 EVO solar units, or around 600 megawatts, will be developed in the next 5 years, was recognized by the Portuguese government as one of the 4 projects out of 74 applicants eligible as IPCEI project, which means important project of common European interest. We expect the final recognition of our projects by European Commission as an EPC project until the end of this year. Now, Morocco. As explained before, we are developing a project which we called EVO Ammonia Project, consisting of the installation of a green hydrogen plant to produce 31,000 tons in the center of Morocco that will be used to produce 180,000 tons of green ammonia and will abate 280,000 tons of CO2 per year. The project was recently announced in a public ceremony in Rabat, hosted by the Minister of Energy and Mines, and has a global investment of more than $850 million. The project would be jointly developed by Fusion Fuel and Consolidated Contractors Company, a global EPC contractor, and Vitol, one of the world's leading energy and commodity company that will manage the offtake of the green ammonia and the monetization of the certificates of origin. The green ammonia will be used for local fertilizer industry to be exported as hydrogen carrier for the north of Europe, where it will be cracked to obtain, again, green hydrogen to be mixed in the natural gas and be injected in the natural gas grid, and to be exported to the north of Europe to be sold to potential industries. The global project will be developed in the next 5 years, but we really expect to start construction of phase 1, consisting of installation of 180 EVO solars next year, with the aim to commission it before the end of 2022.
Great. Thank you, John. So I'll just quickly recap on our 2021 milestones. This is, again, the repetitive slide that will always come up. Our Everett plants go live, as mentioned before. We hope to have phase 1 ready to be commissioned, we hope, in September, with phase 2 construction well underway, and shortly, as soon as the membranes allow, also ask for the commissioning of phase 2. The Everett plant is already working as with its intended purpose of facilitating the technology demonstration to clients, which is why we believe that we're also in a good position to start signing the HPAs and confirmed orders. We've already signed significant MOUs, as we mentioned throughout this presentation, with Ampol, Elecnor, CCC, Vitol, and so on. So we have a very strong partner bench. And now we're moving into the HPAs, starting with the PORTUGAL projects. Major step forward already there with that project confirmed. And now with Everett, we hope to be able to share with you some very good news in the coming months. Production facility, obviously we're happy with the better product performance and better product that will be coming out of the production facility. but disappointed that we have to delay the go live into the sort of third quarter of 2022. We will obviously do whatever we can to speed that up, and we will, in the meantime, continue to count on our production partners to deliver for the projects in the meantime. Right now, we can open up for Q&A. With me, obviously there's João. Also have here Andre. Andre joined us as our head of our chief production officer a couple of weeks ago. The Benavente project will be fully his going forward, so he'll be the one working the miracles to get that faster. On the phone, we also have Jaime, our CTO, and we have Jeffrey, our chairman, as well. I believe people can type in their questions, and Ben, ready to advance with the questions whenever you are.
Okay, great. Thanks, Rodrigo. So we received a handful of questions. I'm getting some feedback on my end. Hopefully that's not a problem. So we'll go in order that the questions were asked. Just waiting to see if Jaime and Jeffrey are on. Great. So actually, the first one is for Jaime himself. The expected technical lifetime of the HEVO solar units.
Yes, good afternoon to everyone. The HEVO solar units are designed for 25 years. Be there on the steel structure models, concentrated models, and so on. So they are preparing to have an operation to the 25 years, considering that the most critical issues regarding the membranes are substituted every 7 years. So the system during the lifetime will have two substituted of the back part of the EVOs, and their costs is included in the operation and maintenance costs for the lifetime when we calculate the hydrogen costs that we are able to reach in a specific location with a specific radiation, solar radiation.
Great. And sticking with technology, so a question about the design improvements. Have these, if we, Federico alluded to this, have they improved efficiency, lowered production costs, lowered raw material requirements? If you could talk a little bit more about those design improvements from Gen 1 to Gen 2.
Yes, the design that and the implementation that has been made in Evora has created a series of optimizations, mainly on in the water distribution network and the hydrogen collecting networks that has allowed us, even considering the state of the raw material globally on the market, to have some improvements in the system. The improvement on the efficiency is not an improvement of efficiency, but is an improvement of the hours that system is able to operate in allow radiation. So the total, in fact, give us a result of around 10% more, as explained in the third party testing performance. That performance tests were made in a very simple concept: how much sun comes from the sky and how much hydrogen comes from the output. So it was with calibrated equipments measuring both, managed by an auditing laboratory that one of best known auditing laboratories, and that performance was made through some period, continuous period, and also involving concepts of radiation variation and so on. So it's a very simple concept: what energy I have from the sun, how much hydrogen has been produced, and the results were a little bit higher than the numbers that we are considering for next year.
Great. One more question for you before I share the love. Question about water needs. How is the deionized water sourced for the Evora project? And more broadly, how much will water availability and water scarcity factor into projects in other locations?
Exactly. The water, we need water with some sort of purity. We need to deionize the water and clean it. So the type of process used depends strongly from the water source on that location. Specifically in Evora, we get water from the ground. It's a very brown water with a lot of iron and so on. So in the plant, the water is cleaned with a specific materials, specific equipments that we designed for that specific water. It's on the full power plant on a ring with a purity of around 500 microsiemens. So it goes inside the ring at 500 microsiemens, goes outside the ring with 600 microsiemens. So it's enough for the requirements of, it's even better from the minimal requirements of Vivo Solar. But it's always a customized solution, project by project. Depends if the water is available from the network, if we have to bring it from the ground, if we have to bring it from the sea, there is an additional process to purify the water and so on. So it's a custom solution, is not a solution that works for all. It's a custom solution designed for the type of water of that specific location. And Evora was already a strong challenge because the water was not so good.
Great. Thanks, Jaime. So I'm going to throw Andre into the fire here only 2 weeks after he's joined, but anybody can feel free to join in as well. So a question about the production capacity of the Benavente facility from 2023 until it's fully built out.
So, sorry, Ben, did you say the production facility, volume in 2023?
Correct.
Sure. Well, I'll answer that to not throw Andre too early to the wolves here. The production facility in 2023 is planned to have around about 9,700 units, Vivo Solar units.
Great, thanks. Sticking with you, Federico. So with reference to the investments made in raw material purchases, inventory in response to those shortages, how many Vivo Solar units can be manufactured with the stock today?
With the stock today, well, it all depends on the arrival of the membranes. So we have a number of stock for substantially more Vivo Solars than we're announcing we will produce. But there are a couple of critical components that obviously are the missing pieces. The main challenges we have, very transparently, is obviously, as I mentioned before, the membranes. We're having a high degree of flaws in the membranes that are arriving to us, which is leading us to send a significant number back. Our manufacturing partner is looking to increase production as fast as they can, but that is one of the critical bottlenecks we have there, in addition to the lenses. Obviously, the lenses production for the solar concentration piece has been a challenge with some of our providers, and even throughout the year, at times even obtaining the raw material. So we have been trying to stock up even purchasing the raw material as the year has gone through. But we have for some of the metal, for far more, for 600 and more Vivo Solars. So wherever we can, we are building up the strategic stock. But unfortunately, all you need is one or two components to fall short that you don't have a Vivo Solar.
Great, thanks, Federico. We received a question on the expected economics of HPAs, both for fusion as well as for the customer, just to perhaps walk through how that works given the purchase price of a new solar unit.
So I'll talk about the for fusion fuel. I'll let João talk about the economics on the client side, so the price of levelized cost of hydrogen and so on. On our side, as we have announced from the start for HPAs, what we aim to do is to target on a levered IRR basis of around 20%. That is our target for the HPAs. It means an unlevered rate somewhere between the around 9 to 10% on the unlevered basis.
Okay. When we negotiate projects with the direct off-taker of the hydrogen, they don't look so much at an IRR for the hydrogen they are producing. So that their calculations is based on the levelized cost of hydrogen. So normally, our clients, most of them, they use a discount rate of 5%. So it means that the levelized cost of hydrogen is calculated considering a discount rate of 5%. Some other developers that are willing to install projects to supply green hydrogen to the final off-taker, they will want more or less the same type of IRRs that we are assuming internally in fusion fuel.
I will just also add that for the clients, part of their levelized cost of hydrogen will of course be depending on the amount of grants or so on that their projects are eligible for. So that can be a substantial variation in the levelized cost of hydrogen at the end.
Great, thanks. Sticking with here, given the recent proof of concept, did you see more interest in the Gulf region?
Sorry, Ben, we couldn't hear you here.
Yeah, there's a question about, given the proof of concept at Evora, are we seeing more interest coming from companies in the Gulf region?
Yes, of course. Every project was very important just for us to demonstrate a real project producing. So demonstrate performance, we will demonstrate degradation, and we will demonstrate the availability of the system. As soon as we demonstrate that, and all of this performance is calculated based on the level of solar radiation, and temperature and humidity. Of course, when we go to these other geographies, it's just making the calculations, revising with the local solar radiation and local temperature. So it's very important.
But we have to confirm, we have received increased interest not only from the MENA region, I would say from many other, all the regions that João mentioned as he went through the map. We have had parties interested in visits from across the board.
Great. Question here, either for Jaime or for Federico, perhaps. What is behind the 25% increase that you mentioned in raw material costs? Is it driven primarily by polysilicon costs or other components?
No, I give you two examples. The aluminium, since October last year until yesterday, has rising 51%. Steel is around 40%. So we have raw materials, traditional raw materials that are used in a huge amount of industries that are facing right now a strong increase for several reasons. In Europe, one of them is related with import taxes that the European Commission has created to aluminium coming from China, and that explodes immediately. And only these two are materials. They are more, but only these two are materials that we use a lot in our tracking system, in our models, and so on. We also have a strong increase in the noble metals that we use, like gold. We use gold, like platina, like iridium. All them have rising a lot. And the third group is related to electronics. Electronics are right now the main problem on electronic components are not so the increasing on costs, but the availability. So we are facing strong difficulties to negotiate with suppliers and to keep our share intact during a long period. Some of them are not accepting long orders. They do not know what will going to happen, so they accept short orders. So it's a fight from the purchasing department to try to secure as much material as possible. There is no idea when this is going to finish, if it's going to finish in 1 year, in 2 years, in 6 months, or in more period. For sure, cannot be sustainable. A lot of industries will go away, will face strong difficulties if these raw materials keep increasing. And we have our purchasing department just fighting to keep to secure as much product as possible in order to avoid shortage, or at least not avoiding but minimized shortage.
Thanks, Jaime. On the subject of supply chain issues, how critical do you see those issues? Might they endanger or delay upcoming projects and potentially scare customers?
You know, this is affecting all the value chain, not affecting only us. The only thing we can do right now, and as we have predicted in the beginning of the year, is to go to the market and buy, and secure mainly the raw materials. There was one question that asked for how many EVOs we have inside in raw material. We cannot say like that exactly, but we can say that still we have for a huge amount of them, because we are securing what we are afraid that becomes more easily a shortage. Anyway, right now we are already preparing the stocks for the plans of next year. But it's a fight, continuous fight.
When we say that the clients, if they are afraid of the delay, you see today most of the off-takers of hydrogen, they are really afraid of the increase of the price of natural gas, the increase of the price of electricity, so the increase of the CO2 tax emissions. So what we see today is that 1 year ago, most of the big consumers of hydrogen were looking just for the grey hydrogen. Today, they are all starting to look in much more detail to the green hydrogen, because they know when they contract a green hydrogen project, they will stabilize the price at least for the next 15 to 25 years. Because most of as we explained before, as we work off-grid, most of the cost of our hydrogen is just the investment that is done at the beginning of the project. So yes, they are afraid about small delays, but they know the future will be much more complex if they remain on the grey hydrogen.
Thanks, Joe. I guess jumping off of that, especially in light of the report that came out recently about blue hydrogen, this is a pretty straightforward question. Do you have an estimation of CO2 equivalent emissions per kilogram of hydrogen for a HEVO solar module?
I think on a running basis, we don't have a CO2 impact. That said, we have not yet calculated the CO2 footprint of producing the unit. So I'm not sure if the question was on the actual production of the unit, but if we're just thinking of green hydrogen versus blue hydrogen, there's simply no carbon emissions involved in our process as it runs.
Yeah.
On the other side, we are delivering a huge amount of oxygen to the air. I will say that when EVO Solar is able to deliver to the air the same oxygen that around 80 big trees per year. So we are not emitting CO2 and we are delivering oxygen back.
Great. Federico, in light of the updated forecast, what is your view on liquidity going forward?
So the updated forecast actually in a way helped our liquidity situation, because most of the projects we wanted to do in 2021 and also the majority of 2022 were own developments, which required a significant capital injection or capital investment from our side. The reduction of that deliverable also reduces the actual cash output and investment that we need to make in the same years. What we have done for 2022 with the production reduction is that we reduced more of the production going to our own projects versus the third-party purchase targets, so that the sort of one-off revenues that you see with sale of a hydrogen generator, we hope to have those less impacted in 2022, and we will likely take more of that sort of reduction in investment and deployment of PIVO solar in the projects that we would own and operate ourselves. But this is, we would like to have done more and to produce more, but on the upside, it actually reduces a bit of pressure on our liquidity position.
Thanks, Federico. A couple of questions here about hydrogen storage and hydrogen compression. So how do you store hydrogen for electricity production at Évora, and what are your storage capacities in Évora?
In Évora, we have an inline system that has two levels of compressor. The first level, it's a level that allows to adequate to the solar radiation variation, like a buffer, and second level will store in vessels of 300 bars. The fuel cell is connected to the storage vessels, and then starts operating at night. So in fact, we are receiving solar radiation during the day and delivering electricity at night. It's working like a similar concept of solar with batteries, but with a completely different approach of the energy vehicle used. So it's a practically inline system that delivers some hours later the hydrogen that has been produced. It's not a big storage. Storage is able to store around 2-3 days maximum, but the license we have is that we can only deliver the electricity when sun went down. So during the night, in some way to accommodate the difference of renewable energy at night and day. So it's a prototype project, it's a demonstration project. In fact, behind the compressor is exactly equal to any other projects. The users of hydrogen in this particular case is electricity at night, and it's a simple. In this project, we will also test, not now, after commission, a different situation of connecting directly one EVO and a fuel cell. So it will also allow us to create a new product. Anyway, this is the answer.
And following up on that, and I'll loop Zhao in here. So for EVO Solar Cines, or for the green gas phase 2 of Évora, what pressure is required for blending in the natural gas network?
You see, we produce the hydrogen. We take the hydrogen out. Today, we take the hydrogen in the green gas. We take the hydrogen at 1 bar, pressure of 1 bar, and then it is compressed and stored in vessels. The type of the compression needed depends on the off-taker. So when we, for instance, when we inject hydrogen into a refinery, we need to supply the hydrogen at the pressure of around 29 to 30 bars. If we want to supply hydrogen for a hydrogen refilling station, we have the best solution, economic solution, is to supply the hydrogen already at 300 bars. So in the case of Sines, there's several possibilities. So we can inject in low pressure, medium or high pressure. Some, for the first project in Sines, is low pressure. So we will inject at 10 bars. But high pressure, we may have to inject at 60 bars. So it really depends on the quantities and what pipeline we are injecting in. The question is, in order to allow us to compress more or less, we have to install some compression systems and storage to store the hydrogen compressed to be injected, normally in a constant flow, because we cannot inject the hydrogen according to the hydrogen that is being produced in a daytime. So we have always to store part of this hydrogen, compress it and inject it in a constant flow.
Thank you, João. So coming up here on the top of the hour, but a couple more questions to squeeze in here. There's a question on the ISQ tests, that there are 3 different tests. Part 1 is done and completed successfully. What do the subsequent tests 2 and 3 focus on?
No, the first one is the one that measures performance. So this is the real test. The remaining 2, one is to measure the quality of the hydrogen. So if we produce hydrogen with 99.5 or 98.5, whatever. And third one is a longer period. So what we have agreed with them, and it's a test of several days in a continuous way, producing hydrogen, resisting, and also recording the wake up and the lie down of the system. So in the morning, when the sun is already at 5 degrees, the system will wake up, keeps producing during full day, and goes down in the end of the day. So it's a continuous period. So is no more than is equal to the first one, but for a longer period and covering the wake up and the lie down of the system.
Great, thank you, Jaime. A couple more questions. One on the competitive landscape. Who do you see as your biggest competitors, if any? I'll open that up to anybody who wants to answer.
So I'll take that on the competitive landscape. I'd say it's pretty clear who the large providers of electrolyzers and so on are in the space, and large players of hydrogen, significantly larger than we are. However, one of the particular sort of advantages that we have is that we are designing our own projects. So when we're going up with the projects, we are partnering up with the client, we're partnering up with the off-taker, and in the majority of cases, we're actually designing the projects hand in hand with them. So it's not that we are going into a competitive bidding situation with the competition at this point. That will likely come as the market develops, but as this is such a new market with so much interest, I believe this is generally the case for many of the players as well. I don't think we are unique there, but it is that I wouldn't say that we are coming up against and pitching one technology against the other at this point in time.
Okay, thanks, Federico. So we're coming up here on the top of the hour. So I think we'll wrap up our Q2 update call here. For those questions, there are a few that we didn't get to. Please feel free to reach out to ir@fusion-fuel.eu, and we'll do our best to answer those questions. And otherwise, thank you for joining us. We look forward to keeping you updated.